Well, hey class, a little different um, class today. Again, rather than meeting in person, I said we'd probably be doing something on Zoom, but rather than doing that, since I will be just getting into California, figured it'd be good to just do a pre-recording of the class, and then that way you guys can watch it um, when it's most convenient. But I would encourage you not to delay in watching this. Obviously, if you're watching it, then you're watching it now. And so don't pause it and watch it later. But what we'll do in this time is we'll finish the notes for methods. I'll go through some of it. Some of the notes will be a little faster than some of the other ones maybe that we've done. Whoops. Camera's falling over here. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, or we can talk the next time we do an in-person class, which will be February 8th, I believe. February 8th, we should be back in person. I'll let you know if something changes, but we'll start our marriage and family counseling notes that week. We'll have new notes printed out for you that I'll give to you during that time. But we are on the sixth I, the issue of inducement. So we talked about implementation or homework, and then now we're talking about inducement and the idea of getting somebody to commit to something, getting somebody to commit to biblical change, getting somebody to commit to doing really the hard work of sanctification and changing, even when it's hard, they don't want to. We might have to spur them on and to urge them on a little maybe a little differently depending on each person. But actually, before we get into that, a few things that I wanted to bring up from last time talking about homework is, and we did touch on a little bit, but the issue that good hermeneutics leads to good application or good implications, and that if we don't understand what the Bible means, especially in the original context, the original languages, historical settings, and those sort of things, then we're probably going to misunderstand the text in general. We might not give good application points then to that person. We kind of gave some examples last week. Another example that I heard, this was real. I believe this was Stuart Scott, an old professor of mine. He was doing some marriage counseling with a couple, and they just seemed to argue at everything. They had nothing in common, and basically they were always at each other's throats and just never liked the same thing. And so he just said, why, like, what made you guys want to get married? Like, why did you get married? You don't really seem to enjoy the same things. You never really seem to have been like friends before. You never really seemed to like each other before you got married, based off of what you're telling me. And this is real. They said, well, some of our friends told us we should get married. We didn't know what to do. We're just like, I don't know, I guess you're always getting married. Maybe we should get married. So they sat down with their pastor and they said, well, what should we do? How do we know if it's God's will for us to get married or not? We're just not really sure. And he said, well, just as Joshua walked around the walls of Jericho and the walls of the town came tumbling down, you should walk around her 7 times. And if the walls of her heart fall down, then that's God's will for you guys to get married. Like, no joke, that's what he said. So the guy gets up in the office and walks around her 7 times. The pastor's like, well, what did you feel? She's like, I don't know, I guess I felt something. It's like, okay, well, it's probably an implication of God's will for you to get married, because the walls of your heart are starting to tumble, and so we don't want to miss that boat. And we got to be very careful with our understanding of God's word, so we don't make unwise decisions and help other people make unwise decisions. So we need to have good hermeneutics so that we can have good application or good implications. There's one, as we talked about before, there's only one proper interpretation, and there's really only one application, but there's many implications. So an application of a text might be husbands, you are to, the text in Ephesians 5, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. The application is love your wife. Now, the implication for that for each guy might look different in how he goes about loving his wife, but the application will be should be very similar. And also, we have to understand the difference between implications and imperatives. So an imperative is a command. So it's commanding to do something. Husbands, love your wives. That's a command to do that. And the implication for each guy, again, is going to look different for each person, but they can't get out of the fact that they each need to love their wives as an imperative. That's a command for everyone to do something that's universal. Implications are going to look different for each maybe context, each person, and things that are, again, implied from the text that can be unique to that situation. So just some helpful kind of reminders there as we think through some of these issues. Again, back to inducement real quick. Again, what is inducement? Again, it means to influence or to act or to prevail upon, right? To motivate somebody. It means to provide maybe some sort of incentive or leading somebody to think they need to do something. So when we are trying to talk about counseling and discipleship, of convincing them, persuading them, motivating them through the Word of God, not through our own skillful speech or skillful efforts, but to motivate them with the Word of God to make certain commitments or decisions that will facilitate biblical change. Again, this might sound as simple as, hey, will you commit to doing this? Will you do this? God's word says this is what you need to do. And here's some ways in which we have discussed for you to apply that and for you to walk that out. Will you do this? It could be as simple as that. And we'll talk about maybe how do you get over some of the humps of people say, yeah, I want to, kind of like Israel said, yeah, we will obey, and they didn't do that. How do you then motivate them from that point? And we'll talk about that. Again, I know you can't ask questions now because this is not live and it's YouTube. So just ask questions via email, text, whatever. We'll talk later. That's fine. Again, but the importance of getting somebody to commit to the biblical process. Again, as we're going to see, people will change or people will not change, excuse me, unless they really want to. Change doesn't happen by mere chance or by random acts. It happens by choice. It happens by a conscious decision of the will to do something. Now you might be saying, well, doesn't God act upon us? Yes, he does. He does do that, but we are commanded to walk out that obedience. And so although it is God working in us, we must also work and obey and his commands. And so that's one of the importance of getting people to commit is they need to make that decision to obey and to change. Again, we can help people follow through to the commitments that they've made, things that they said that they will do. And we want people to change for the right reasons also. We want people to not have a view of sanctification that they can just let go and let God, in the sense that they can just sit there and meditate on the gospel all day, but never actually obey, never actually open the word, never actually pray, never repent, never put into practice the implications of Scripture. All right, so we need to help them think through that as well. Also, watch out for sort of half-hearted commitments, like I'll try to do that, or I should do that, or I know I need to do that. People might say that to me sometimes, and I will say, well, okay, what do you mean you'll try? Excuse me, what do you mean you'll try? Because this isn't a trying, this is a doing. Or people say, I know I should probably do that. Well, then do it. Don't tell me you should. Tell me that you will, and get that commitment from them. Again, you're not going to come down hard on them or harsh. You're just asking, what do you mean by I'll try, or what do you mean by that? Or depending on the person, sometimes I can be a little more firm and say, oh, you mean you will? Is that what you mean? Instead of I should, rather you will. And so just a helpful kind of commitment there. We don't want to manipulate them. We want to motivate them. We don't want to give into manipulation to get somebody to do something that we want them to do, but we want them to obey Scripture. Especially as we don't want them to become dependent upon us. We want them to become dependent upon God's word. And nor do we want to be like the Apostle Paul says, for we are not like many peddling the word of God, but from sincerity. But as from God, we speak in Christ, in the sight of God. So we're not doing this out of greed. We're not peddling the word of God for gain. We're not manipulating people to obey. We're motivating them to honor the Lord and to follow him by giving them a great high picture of Christ, giving them a high view of God, giving them a greater understanding of who Christ is and his love for them, and what joy can be found in obedience to Scripture and sanctification. That's a great motivation. Right. So the method by which you help people and motivating them is not by peddling or not by trying to force them or trying to hold out a proverbial carrot, so to speak, to get them to grasp that, because that's all they're going to be going after. But we want to give them Christ. We want to show them Christ. It's also going to be different in maybe the manners by which we do so, the methods and the manners. And so again, how we say and do certain things will make the difference between, are we manipulating them or are we inducing them? And so Paul is exhorting Timothy again in 1 Timothy 5, not only the Corinthians, but in 1 Timothy, he says, do not sharply rebuke an older man, but rather appeal to him as a father. To young men as to brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity. And so we see even the different ways in which Paul is exhorting Timothy to how to deal with different age groups of people, making that appeal rather than rebuking, treating older women as mothers, older men as fathers. We have a different level of sort of speaking to them and different level of respect towards those age groups. And so there's just something to be said about that and how we are speaking to people to motivate them and to appeal rather than just say, hey, why don't you get it together? And I think there's just a lot of wisdom in that. What are some of the commitments that we want them to make? A couple things here. We want them obviously to commit to reading their Bible, but to make the Bible their final authority. To make the Bible the final authority, 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, John 17:17, and your word is truth. Psalm 119 and many other places. They have to commit to that. Otherwise, they're going to be seeking change elsewhere. They're going to be seeking advice elsewhere, unless they, and they'll never grow until they commit to making the Bible their authority. Also, we need to commit them to trust and depend on Christ, not on themselves or not on other people. They need to commit themselves to trust on Christ alone for the changes that need to be made. And help them to trust and to commit to place themselves under the means of God's grace for change. So again, that's the means of the local church, discipleship, accountability, God's word and prayer, serving, to commit themselves to do that, not all these other sort of worldly ideas and mindsets, but commit themselves to God's grace. Also to commit, letter D there, to view and call all things unbiblical in their life as God calls them. Again, to view sin is the main idea there. To have them commit to say, look, we're not going to call this maybe an addiction. We're not going to call this, maybe there's a label. We're going to call this thing sin because that's what God does. And there's hope in that, as we have discussed previously. We want them to commit to take personal responsibility for unbiblical thoughts, motives, actions, feelings, and so on, and not ignore it, not blame shift, but to commit to that. We need to have them to be concerned about their sin in their hearts, as well as their sin in actions and their behavior, the sins that are going on inside as well as outside. We want them to commit to be free from sin, free from the bondage of sin, not just free from the unpleasant consequences, that are caused by sin, that they're making every effort to mortify and to get rid of the sin in their life, not to make exceptions, or not to make um, room for things that are causing them problems. We also want them to forsake all other gods and to worship and serve God alone, right? Not to, again, this goes back to the other one as far as getting rid of sin, but to forsake all other gods, to not worship the idol of self or the idol of comfort, to the God of this world, the God of entertainment, whatever, God of pleasure, but they need to be committed to worship God and Him alone. They also need to do whatever is necessary to actually work on changing things in their lives that are displeasing to God. So if they're acting and living in a way that's dishonoring God, they need to commit to change that. And that will include them doing their homework that you give to them, the assignments you give to them, scripture reading, other things you're asking them to do. It's gonna include a commitment to work on just the biblical insights and directives, and putting those things into practice that you have been discussing with them. Just the biblical principles that you're teaching them, to commit those to practice. A few other things, again, they want them to commit to adopt God's agenda or God's plan for their life. So rather than seeking to glorify self, they're seeking to glorify God, and not their own agenda, but God's plan for them, no matter what happens, no matter the trials, the suffering, whatever, they're committing to God's will for them. And to commit to adopt God's methods for handling problems, which we have been discussing, but as you're discussing that with them, as you are helping them think through how to think through unbiblical motives, unbiblical thoughts, unbiblical categories of things, you want to help them to just commit to doing that regularly in their lives. And then lastly, to persevere into doing what God wants them to do. You don't want to let them give into fear. You don't want to let them give into their feelings. You want to let them, you want to help them to commit to doing whatever they need to do to honor God, to persevere in that, to not lose hope, to not give up, but to persevere in doing that. They have to remember that sanctification is a lifelong process. It's not a one-time event. It's not just for a couple months or a couple years. It is a lifelong process. So they need to learn to persevere, even in times of dark valleys. So sometimes in inducing people, helping people to be committed to something will require your skill in overcoming their resistance. So, excuse me. So a couple different skills here that we could look at. Just Mark 10, pulling it up here on my phone, where you have Jesus with the rich young ruler. Jesus is pretty overtly helping this person overcome his resistance, although the guy turns away. But Jesus is pretty pointed to what is going on. So sometimes your skill in identifying maybe the resistance is saying, well, it's because you're worshiping wrong things. You seem to be worshiping wrong ideas and a wrong God. Like this rich young ruler, he was worshiping himself. He was worshiping his own righteousness rather than worshiping Christ. It's pretty overt. Other times it may be more covert, where you need to, the person is maybe it's maybe less clear, as like the rich young ruler, where he was pretty resistant, especially when he walked away. Other people may be resistant, but it's harder to see. A couple ways to see that is maybe they cancel meetings with you. They don't do their homework. They're consistently late. They distance themselves from you maybe a little bit. They sidetrack a lot. They become argumentative, blame shifting, rambling, so on. And so you might have to use a little more wisdom of how you go about helping them, knowing what their resistance, what are they resistant to, and how to help them kind of overcome Again, so this is also going to include just you interpreting what's going on. So do they have an unregenerate heart? Do they not have a desire for the Lord? Are they just ignorant of truth? Are they fearful? Are they discouraged a lot? Do they have bitterness, resentment? Do they enjoy the pleasures of sin? Do they have a victim mentality? They're lazy, slothful, whatever. So you're gonna have to use some skill there in discerning what's going on to help them kind of overcome that. But you want to again also teach them maybe, or you grow in being persuasive or motivational, and not a motivational speaker, but to motivate them with the Word of God. And this will include a skill in counteracting, overcoming that person's resistance. Some suggestions for that would be, again, you make sure you really understand the way they think, conceptualize, the way that they're thinking, the way they're understanding, the way that they are thinking through issues. Make sure you understand also why their motives or why their behavior is unbiblical. Make sure it's not just a preference issue, but it's actually sin, it's actually unbiblical. And making sure that you are understanding the reasons for their resistance, as we discussed above. Again, carefully explain to them what the Bible says then about their situation or their response or their goals or whatever. So there's just a wide variety of different things you need to be kind of thinking through with that. You also want to think about the time that you've spent with them, the pacing of your correction to them, and the pacing of which you're motivating them. And so you want to just be wise with that. You want to just maybe dump everything on them all at once, but kind of maybe take some time to help them to see their motivation that needs to be in Christ. We need to maybe learn to adapt a more confrontational lifestyle. Not that we're coming at people with full force, but that we are more willing to confront rather than just to kind of hold their hands up and say, I don't really know, but to be to confront them and with love, with grace, and with gentleness. Sometimes they play back their words or repeat back to them the words or the phrases that they use to help them to see this their resistance. They might not see that, and some other things there. Again, in a model from the Old Testament, we see with Moses was pretty resistant to following God and being really the leader of that mass exodus. But we see how the Lord dealt with him and helped him and even capitulated a little bit with him and said, fine, you don't want to speak, I'll have Aaron be your mouthpiece, but you're going to be the man leading this. That could be a helpful kind of way to think through that, maybe make some compromises here or there with some people to get them to make little steps here and there. The New Testament speaks about this as well, especially the book of Hebrews, of spurring one another on to love and good deeds. Hebrews 3 and Hebrews 10 especially, of teaching us that we need each other in the church to motivate us, to spur us on to obedience and to love. We want to solidify their commitment, explain that again, that importance by any means necessary. Again, if people are still resisting, again, temporary, maybe go for a lesser commitment. Again, this is kind of the idea with Moses. Okay, fine. Maybe we'll start here. We'll do this, and that's fine for a temporary season. Kind of meet them where they're at in their weakness. Use maybe their spouse or somebody else to help them, to motivate them to love and good deeds or love and good works. And again, just to help them, to spur them on to greater and greater obedience. So it looks like that actually is the end of those notes. And actually, now we're on the implementation. Well, I was thinking something before. What did we teach before? What was that? Instruction. I don't know what I was thinking. Implementation. So I could have used what I started out this whole class with now instead of later. Oh well. Never mind. I'm going to press pause here for just a second and make sure I understand what these notes are saying now, because I'm a little confused, and I'll be right back. All right. So everything is right. I was just confused a little bit, but implementation then. So homework. So you're getting them, you're inducing them, you're teaching them, you're inducing them, and then now you're pointing them towards Christ. And so basically implementation then is helping them to obey, helping them to apply the commands of Scripture. So there's a biblical basis for the use of homework. There's many different scriptures that speak about obedience. One of them, I think a very helpful one, is James 1:23. Again, don't be hearers only, but doers of the word. And homework is a way to do that. So people say, well, there's nothing in Scripture that says you must apply it this way. Well, no, but planned obedience is better than no obedience. We need to plan to obey so that we will obey, because sometimes we don't plan, then we don't do it. And so we want to plan to obey, and that's kind of what homework is intended to help people to do. The epistles are full of application points of obedience. The early Ephesians 4, 5, and 6 is all application. Ephesians 1, 2, and 3, chapters 1, 2, and 3 are all the implications of who you are in Christ, meaning just this is not the implications, the imperatives. The implications, the implications of this is who you are in Christ. And then chapters 4, 5, and 6 are the imperatives, now the commands to go out and to obey of the reality of who you are. Proverbs is full of obedience commands, of walking in the truth. And so we want to help people to do that. Again, the benefits of good homework, it really helps set the pattern for change. Proverbs 4:23, that you are setting a guard over your heart, and so you want to help them to see that as well. Also, it helps to clarify expectations from both you as the counselor and the counselee, that when you're meeting with them and you're giving them something to do during the week, so that they don't just have this up and down sort of flow. When they're meeting with you, they're at a high, and they go down, and they come up, but that they are being consistently fed through the Word of God every day as they're doing something in God's Word and applying it somehow. I try to give people enough homework where they're almost every day they're having to do something. So, there's maybe a couple of days where they're not reading. So I try to say read, 4 to 5 days a week. Some other books or other resources or other journals or something that's going to keep them active and busy, because if they wait to do it all at once, and it's going to be overwhelming, and they're not going to do that again. Hopefully that's the plan. And so that's what you're wanting them to do, is to give them enough where they're going to be busy throughout the week, where they're being fed, they're being equipped, they're being challenged, and they're not going to rely on you, but they're finding reliance upon Christ. Good homework also promotes, again, hope by communicating that something can be done, that they can go to God's Word, they can go to prayer, they can find encouragement from fellow believers. Again, it eliminates the professional sort of counselee sort of mindset, where they just keep going to somebody and they never put the responsibility upon themselves for growth. It's always somebody else's fault or somebody else's reasons for why they aren't growing or whatever. It decreases dependence upon you as well from them, as they're again dependent more on the Word of God. It helps to sustain momentum in their growth between your meetings. Would be a week, or sometimes every other week, depending on the situation and the seriousness. It gets momentum going in them, and they come back excited. They come back saying, "This is what I learned. This is what I'm really excited about. This is what I'm confused about, or this is what I'm really seeing the Lord working in me on." And you can see more progress that way as well. again, and also with that, it saves time in the sense of your formal counseling sessions, because you're not meeting for years, but you're meeting for maybe weeks or months with somebody, because you're giving them more counsel during the week. Because again, you only have an hour and a half. There's only so much you can say, but you give them the Word of God, you give them another book, you give them another resource, you give them a little book like this on anger, a small book but a big problem, by Ed Welch, and it's 50 days on just a couple of page little devotions on anger. And so you give somebody, hey, I want you to read one of these a day, and they're always in the Word of God. They're always being hopefully always growing and moving forward in that momentum. And so we talk with that as well. It also helps provide a gauge for their understanding of growth and commitment. So as they're doing homework, as they're filling out maybe sheets or journals, or they're doing reading and then telling you what they learned, it helps you to understand where they're at and their growth and their understanding of God's word. Homework failure also provides opportunity for data gathering, because maybe did they just fail this one time and didn't do it? Are they living based off their feelings, so they don't do it at all? Is it because they don't know how to schedule their time well? Is it because they didn't know what to do? I've done that before. I've given people homework and I come back next week and like, I just didn't know what you wanted. So I've learned how that I need to explain things more upfront, more clearly, explain more than less. It doesn't always work out that way. They still can be confused and they just are embarrassed to talk to me about it. And that's I guess that's just how it is for a little bit. And that's just a failure of the counselor, I guess, but it's something to grow in. Maybe they lack desire, maybe they lack the know-how, the ability, and maybe they just read really slow, or they don't know how to read. I've met some people who they can read, but it's very, very difficult. So even giving them a book where they have to read like 3 pages a week is just daunting for them, because their upbringing or their mental capacity is just so it's just been it's not where maybe the average adult is. So that could be a reason for them not doing it, or maybe they just don't agree. They're not on the same page. This really isn't important. So whatever. Again, and that's something that we all will probably experience. Homework also provides a good starting point for the next session, or a launching point. I was just talking to somebody about this recently, that as you're doing homework, or as you're giving them homework to do, you come back and you kind of start out, well, hey, how'd the week go? Hey, tell me about your Bible reading. What did you learn? Tell me some of the points and principles that stood out to you. Tell me about chapter 5 in the book on depression, and just what were some principles that really stood out, that really were impactful to you. Okay, why were that? And so you're using it as a launch point. Why was that impactful? And that can even lead you into, okay, well, that really reminds us of what I was wanting to talk about today, is during our teaching time, of a trust in the Lord, or whatever. So it can really provide a good launching point for a lot of what you're going to say. And really, because I'll give them homework that will cover things we just talked about and stuff I'm going to talk about in the future. So maybe I'll have them read a chapter, say it's a book on anger, and chapter 2 is on the heart. And so I'm going to say, okay, read chapter 2 this week. It's going to discuss issues of the heart, but I haven't really discussed it with them yet. And so that's what I want to spend at least the next 1 or 2 sessions with them, is discussing idols of the heart, and how that relates to their anger. So they read chapter 2 on the heart, and then I use that as a launching point for drawing out their heart and for seeing what is really going on within them from a biblical point of view. Homework can also facilitate, again, implementation and practice of biblical principles that are essential to godliness, godly habits. So you teach them to read the Bible. You're teaching them to pray regularly, teaching them to be in the church, teaching them to go to a home group, teaching them to serve in some way, teaching them to use their time wisely, and not just Netflix and chill or not just whatever, but to be wise with their time. It also teaches them to provide problem-solving skills for the future, or problem-solving methods for the future, so that they can see, oh, okay, I struggle with anger now, but maybe in 6 months I'm going to struggle with anxiety a little bit, and I can use the same method that I'm using now for that. So you're giving them tools in which they can use in the future. Again, it gives them ideas and materials for how they can help other people as well. Again, something with anger. Hey, part of your homework this week is you need to talk to somebody else about what you're learning, and teach this truth to somebody else. Help somebody else with maybe their anger, or teach them about the heart, teach them this diagram that we went over. I'll often give people that homework, hey, you memorize this diagram and how I taught it to you, and then you teach it back to me next time. And then the next week, you will teach it to somebody else. And so you want to get them to be equipping people as well. Again, it allows them to see their problem in the homework as well as in their session, so that it shows them a little more kind of what's going on. And as they're thinking through maybe heart journals during the week or something, they're able to see a little more clearly what is going on in their hearts. So what's the nature of good homework then? Obviously it's biblical. It has to be biblical. So we want to start out, I often start out with, okay, reading these scriptures, or read this section, or memorize these verses, meditate on these verses. There's something that actually the next time we get together in person, we'll go over. I had like 4 or 5 or 6 or so homework sheets that I think are in your notes at the end. If not, I'll just go over them with you in class, but we'll go over those. And one of them is called the Discovering Wonderful Things worksheet. And that's something I give to a lot of people because it helps them to wrestle with God's word and to apply it. And I'll often give that to people to have them to meditate on God's word often throughout the week. So it needs to be biblical. And if we give them other tools, other books to read, we want those tools to be biblical as well. If we give them practical assignments, we want them to be obviously things that are honoring to God and not going to be sinful or dishonoring to Him. So that's what we got biblical. We want to, again, be appropriate to the person. To the person's problems, to the person's present condition or situation. Again, so somebody doesn't read well, or maybe they're younger, they're a kid or they're a teenager. You may give them different sort of assignments. You may have a child listen to some songs that repeat the Bible verses over in the songs or something, rather than having them read through certain portions of the Bible. Or you may give somebody who's has a learning disorder or something, you may give them audiobooks, you may give them a sermon to watch or something like that that's going to be easier for them. Some people are going to learn more by reading. Some people might learn better by listening. And so you can take that into account. There's a lot of great resources now on like things like Hoopla or Audible or christianbook.com or something, or not christianbook.com, christianaudio.com, where you can give people books to listen to them rather than reading them if they're more auditory learners. If you tell somebody, hey, can you listen to the sermon and get back to me? Sometimes they have a hard time soaking things in when they're just listening. And so you might need to print it out or have them read an article or something that teaches the same principle. That might be better for them. That's how they learn better. So you want to be appropriate to the person, and there's different methods and different ways to do that. And you want to be specific. So you want to be specific to what you want them to do, why they should do it. I don't just say, I want you to memorize this verse. Well, why? Because this verse speaks to this issue or whatever. Sometimes I will say, I want you to read a certain portion of scripture, for example, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, Sermon on the Mount, and I want you to write down some principles that you're learning, that you saw in there. What is Jesus trying to say about this particular issue, or what is Jesus' point in general? And get back to me. And sometimes I'll say, I'm not going to tell you why exactly yet, but I want you to do this because, and the why really is because this does reveal issues that are going on in your life, but I won't always tell them why in that specific passage. Excuse me, that's pretty rare. Though I will typically explain to people why I want them to read a particular text or a particular book. Like I'll say, okay, you're struggling with discouragement a lot. I want you to read the book of Philippians this week. 4 chapters. It'll take you 20, 25 minutes to read. So I want you to read it 3 times. That's a little over an hour's worth of reading for you, maybe an hour and a half of reading. And I want you to read it because it speaks about joy. The book of Philippians is a book of joy. It speaks about joy 8 or 9 times, and multiple times, especially in chapter 4. And so we want you to find joy in Christ and His Word, and so that's why we would go there. Or someone who's struggling with a particular illness, or maybe somebody is suffering a deep, dark trial or suffering persecution. I'd go to 1 Peter, or maybe James, for them. And so you want to tell them why maybe you're having to read certain passages. Again, tell them what's expected, or if you're giving them like a homework assignment sheet, tell them why you want them to do it. Obviously, tell them what's expected. Like, yeah, I want you to read James or read Philippians 3 times, and I want you to each time write down one major, maybe you're just writing one verse from each chapter that really stood out to you, and tell me why that stood out to you. Like, why was that important to you? Why was that impactful to you? And sometimes you're going to see that they are just finding verses that are fluffy, and that really they're taking out of context, and they're claiming verses as promises, but really have nothing to do with what they think that they mean. So you're going to have to gently correct that at times. But that, again, that's explaining what's truly expected. Explain them again how to do it. So if a different homework sheet, just make sure they understand what they're talking about, why you want to do it. You can write it down either during the session, or you write it down on an email or whatever, just so they know what it is. And you can write it down, give them to them later, the next day, whatever. It's just soon after, as soon as you can. That way you can reference it. That way you know what they're supposed to do, and they know what they're supposed to do. Lately, with some of my meetings, I've forgotten to kind of do this, and I've had to apologize. Like, can you tell me what you did? I forgot. And that's just bad. So don't follow my example with that. But write it down for them. Write it down for yourself, or email it, whatever is easiest or whatever is most convenient, kind of in the moment. So. Again, and homework then should call for very specific things. Don't just ask for general patterns of living, but maybe like if you want to help someone with a schedule, don't just say, tell me what you did every 5 hours of the day, or tell me what you did today. Okay, write down every 30 minutes, what did you do? And so there's going to be a big sections of I was at work, right? Or I was cooking, or I was sleeping. But, so that's understandable. But you want to write down maybe every 30 minutes or every hour or something, so that way you and they can see how they spend their time, something like that, more specific rather than just general. Hey, tell me what you did today. So you want to just kind of think through that. Specific verses you're thinking about, specific application points you're thinking about, specific people you need to go and ask forgiveness for, or specific ways you can love your spouse or love your neighbor or whatever. And so that gets into the next point of practical. Homework should be practical. Again, different people from different backgrounds, different situations. You're going to tailor fit the needs to them for their benefit. And so practical, again, maybe they're discouraged, depressed, and they need to get out. So, hey, I want you to walk for 30 minutes. And as you're walking, I want you to maybe listen to a sermon or listen to some music that's going to help you just as you're out walking. In those sort of situations, where I want you to do laundry twice this week. As you're doing laundry, put on a sermon on YouTube from this person, or you send them something, or maybe if they're tempted to just be discouraged or depressed, and they're just watching a lot of videos on Netflix, there's some stuff on Amazon Prime Video. There's some helpful Christian, not how to say, not commentaries, or not documentaries, but sort of like teaching series that they could watch instead. And things like called The Sword and the Trowel by Founders Ministries is really helpful. Ligonier Ministries has a ton of resources on Amazon Prime. There's another new kind of streaming device or streaming network called AGTV, American Gospel Television, and there are hundreds of hours of helpful Christian documentaries, like the American Gospel documentary. You can also buy this from our church for $5. Just talk to Jill. Or you can, I think it's $5, $6 a month for AGTV. And they have a lot of teaching series from Grace Community Church, the Ligonier Ministries, the Just Thinking podcast guys, Founders Ministries, and stuff by Costi Hinn, Benny Hinn's nephew, who's a solid believer now. Not Benny Hinn, but Costi Hinn. And just many other things. So things like that can be practical to them as a way to say, okay, this is what you're used to. Let's turn that a little bit for you to be putting truth into your mind as opposed to just entertainment. And that could be a practical way to help them if that's what they're really craving and being given into. Again, flexible. You want to be flexible with each person on what you give, how much you give. Again, it's tailored to each person, right? And it needs to be sanctifying. It needs to help them to grow. It needs to actually spur them on to obedience to Christ. It's not just fluff for them. It's not just busy work like you had in high school. It's sanctifying assignments, and also reportable assignments. Not all of them, but a lot of them could be reportable in the sense of you want them to write down a journal. You write down their thoughts of this passage. You want them to highlight or underline the 5 major principles that they read in that chapter that really impacted them and why, so that you can go through each one of those things to say, did they do this and how do they do that? Sorry, my kids are pounding on things if you can hear that. How did they do that? Why did they do that? How well do they do that assignment? And so it's reportable, so you can kind of mark it down and you kind of see, is there a pattern of them actually doing their homework, or are they just not doing it? So that can be a helpful tool as well. Again, also, if you just say, hey, I want you to like love your wife this week. Oh, hey, did you love your wife this week? Yeah, I did. Okay, cool. No, I want you to love your wife this week, but I want you to write down 5 ways in which you can do that and then do them. Okay, come back next week. How did that go? What 5 things did you say you were going to do, and how did that go doing them? So it's reportable in that sense. Get different kinds of homework. There's lists, so you can have them write down the sins and failures, or I've kind of changed this to a logs list. So just the log in your own eye. What are the logs in my life? Maybe for like a couple, you want to have them write down likes and dislikes or pros and cons of a certain thing. Maybe if they're talking about moving somewhere or a job, write down pros and cons just to kind of help them to think through what's going on rather than being anxious about it. If they're speaking about conflict issues, maybe write down the different different conflicts in their different various relationships, and then maybe what can they do within those relationships to help edify one another in those relationships, right? Job situation, maybe what you're looking for a job. Well, what are some jobs that you're good at? What are some things you enjoy doing? Whatever. Bills. So our finances out of control. Write down all the bills you have to pay monthly, all the bills you need to pay quarterly, all the bills you need to pay yearly, whatever, and then write those things down to help improve your budget or to help figure out your budget. Again, write down ways God wants to change you, ways you can serve, goals you have in life, strengths and weaknesses, and so on. So list, people write that stuff down. Inventories, and so these would be, Wayne Mack has some helpful things, but basically inventories are kind of like a checklist of, he already has pre-filled out lists of things of maybe likes or dislikes or um, just various other things, different scripture, various scriptures based off of different categories, based off of struggles, issues you have in your life, and really helping to see maybe what are you given into to desire, what do you see, what are you loving at the moment, and these sort of things. So it kind of just inventories different aspects of that struggle of anger. Maybe when do I get angry? Time, place, and these sort of things. It can be helpful tools. Some inventories. Bible studies can help maybe have them develop their own Bible study, depending on their maturity and how long you've been meeting with them. Maybe you provide them a Bible study. They can be careful of which ones you provide them. The Behold Your God Bible studies are very good. Bible studies can tend to be not helpful a lot of times if they are just focused on kind of fluff and more devotion rather than like theology and the doctrine of Christ. And so you want to be cautious of what you give people to do, but there's some helpful ones out there. So maybe if you're having somebody do a Bible study, maybe ask myself or ask somebody else if it's a good one or not. Or even just a small Bible study. So kind of the things I gave you a couple of weeks ago, there's God's Grace Bible study, and there was a few others, some simple things you could do. Again, you want to have them again be different activities, and so so maybe again thinking of the head, heart, hands, home model of where's their heart? Sorry, their heart. I can't even think. Their head knowledge, their heart knowledge, their obedience, their hands, and the home, the church. So where are they at with all that? So they have a lot of theology, but they don't know how to carry a conversation. Okay, well, ask somebody this week how was how was work, how's home life, but don't just stop there. But how was your GC this last week, or what are you learning in God's word this week? Hey, can I share with you some things that God's teaching me in my own heart, my own life? Or maybe they need to learn how to serve, so get them on the setup and tear down ministry at church, or hey, let's serve in the nursery. Or, I mean, of course, background checks and applications and all that stuff, but get them sorted in that process to figure out how to serve. And so you want to just get them to jump out of the comfort zone, so to speak, and do the things that are sort of harder to them. So maybe that could be a physical thing. Okay, I want you to go on a walk with somebody, or go on a walk by yourself and pray or listen to this music or sermon. Hey, I want you to go to GC this week, or show up to church. I've had to tell people even recently, hey, I know it's sort of uncomfortable to be around people you don't know, but you need to go to GC because of these reasons. And I want you to ask somebody at church these questions. Give them more socially interactive, because this person's, hey, you're a little too introverted right now, and you need to be out and speaking to people and be about them rather than about yourself. Again, spiritual, just kind of things we were discussing. They need to read God's word and so on. Recreational, sort of same thing as physical. So I don't know why I have it in there twice, but but maybe recreational. Maybe what I was thinking, probably what I was thinking was that they're recreating with other people. So maybe they're this is where they're going to go on hikes with other people. They're going to go do pick up sports with a group of church people or whatever, just to help get them involved in different activities or different groups of people that they normally don't want to be involved in, or something. Who knows? Again, occupational or scholastic, so with their job or with learning, school stuff, help them be practical in those things. So visiting people. Hey, I want you to go visit somebody in the hospital this next week, or what. I guess you can't do that now, but hopefully we can soon. When I do hospital visits, I like to bring somebody with me just so they can know kind of how to do that. It's very helpful. Visiting people in the hospital, especially when they're dying, is very humbling. It's very sobering. and it's good for us to train people how to do that. Or people when they have just had surgery or about to go into surgery, it's helpful to go and pray with them and bring somebody along with you to do that. So I'll try to do that as much as I can. Another way to do homework is journals, as we discussed. So general kind of questions of what happened, what did you feel, where were you, what are your thoughts, what'd you do, what should you have done, those sort of things. Homework, the journals that are more directed on maybe their conflicts, or more devotional in flavor, or more focused on their temptations, or more focused on how did you serve people this week. Number 7, there's self-talk. That's just referring to how are you speaking truth to yourself. That's really probably what I should have said. How are you speaking truth to yourself this week in moments of anger or anxiety or something. And so different things there. Thankfulness list, number 8, I use that one a lot for people and myself. Write down a list of thankfulness. Many times we're bitter, we're angry, we're anxious because we're not thankful. So we need to be a thankful people. Have people write that down. Write down 10 ways in which you're thankful for your wife this week. Next week, okay, write down 20 things. Or I wrote down 10, well, 20 more. Okay, next week, write down 20 more. Or write down 10 ways in which you're thankful to the Lord this week for very practical things. And so you just want people to get in the habit of being thankful and seeing everything in life really as a reason to be thankful. Again, different books, audiobooks, other reading materials we discussed, planning assignments of scheduling different things, help them to learn how to schedule their life better or something. Evaluative assignments, which we've already sort of discussed, but the logs lists or different inventories or husband and wife scorecards to see how well they know each other. This can be kind of fun things for spouses to kind of get to do to sort of relearn about each other. Maybe they've been married for a decade and they just haven't maintained that relationship. And so you can do something like that. Again, Wayne Mack has some of that in his homework manuals. Again, when to determine if counseling should be terminated based off of the homework. Well, is the counselee able to identify the problems biblically and to deal with them biblically? Can they give themselves their own homework, basically? Can they practice new responses and patterns sort of automatically without having to come to you or somebody else and say, hey, can you tell me what to do? So you want to help them kind of with that by giving them good homework. Or maybe the counselors failed. And they've identified the reason for the failure, and they've made plans. They've given themselves new homework to make it right, to obey. They can specifically state how they've changed and what they need to do to continue the change. They've been tested and they've been victorious, so to speak, underneath that test. And so that can be a helpful way to know, hey, our time is we're kind of done here based off of just the way that they've been able to think through practical homework assignments for their own life. As you start out to do that, you want to wean them off and they are give themselves their own homework. Again, but how do you how to terminate counseling in general? We'll talk more about this, I think, in just in a few minutes, but you're going to give increased time between meetings. So maybe we met once a week. Now it's every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks, and then once a month. And then, hey, I want to do a 3-month follow-up with you or something. That could be a helpful way to do that. Again, they're assigning themselves their own homework. You give instructions to them about what to do if they find themselves struggling and just stuck. Hey, call me or do this or call so-and-so, something. Give them a warning of what will happen if they don't persevere and they don't continue in this path. You don't want to be rude, but you want to give them a warning of, hey, you need to persevere in this and to obey. Promise to follow up and secure that. Like, hey, let's meet again in a month. Set a date, get a time, remind them, whatever, and so on. And then there's different also checkup assignments. Again, there's different forms, different lists of questions and concerns. You want to review different homework assignments with them before you kind of end counseling. Maybe list the ways that the person has continued to make progress and the ways in which they've retreated a little bit, and be helpful for them to see kind of what where they need to grow and how they need to continue to persevere. Again, any questions about that, please let me know. Yeah, we don't need to be intimidated by the homework. It's not as complicated as it seems. You're helping people just practically to obey the Bible. That's all you're doing. And oftentimes, if you're just discipling somebody, the homework you would give them is just, what are you reading? What are you learning? So just, hey, why don't you do this with me? So it's what we can do. We can all do that. And then lastly here, the last I, integration. So this is integration into the local church, making sure that they're not just seeing counseling as a separate ministry of the church, but they're seeing counseling as a crucial part of the local church. Now, this is just part of what the church does. And so you integrated them into the church by first, and the reason for this is you want to help them to see, you want to help them to put off, again, unbiblical habits. And by integrating their lives into the Bible, into the habits that God's word states. And then you want to help to integrate them into, again, integrate that person into the life of the church. Because we want them to see that counseling is a critical part of all that we do as a church, that counseling happens on Sundays during the sermon. Counseling happens at GCs during the week. Counseling does the one-on-ones. Counseling happens when you're serving. That the growth of that person in the counseling room and the counseling time, that growth of that person will be exponentially seen as they are integrated into the church. And if they're not integrated into the church, I can tell you by personal just experience, and I think by scripture as well, that the growth of that person is significantly reduced and greatly hindered when they're not in the church, and they're not serving, they're not listening to the preaching, they're not going to a GC, they're not meeting with other people throughout the week, they're not practically serving in some way, they're not being spoken into by somebody else other than you. This is why discipleship is not just one-on-one, although it is that. It is also a greater picture of what the body of Christ is supposed to be doing to one another. And all of our ministries are meant to disciple, which is why when we preach, what we're discipling. When we do counseling, we're discipling. When we do our kids ministries, we're discipling. When we do our quarter cookout or our outreach ministries, we're discipling, sharing the gospel and discipling others to come alongside us and minister. So this is what we want people to do in counseling as well. Again, biblical basis for that. There's many verses there. Ephesians 4:1, the last one there, Paul just says, I therefore, Paul, exhort you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. He's talking to the whole church there. All of you need to walk in this manner worthy. You need, as believers, we need to be involved in the church. We need to walk in a worthy manner, to put off sin, to put on obedience, to put off pride, and to put on humility, and to walk that out into the church. We need to be integrated into the church. Obviously, Acts 2 speaks about that. Romans 12 gives a list of all the different gifts of the church. Plus, you can add on to that 1 Corinthians 12-14 as well, and 1 Peter 5. Some verses there in 1 Peter 4, excuse me. And also Ephesians 4:1-16 speaks about the gifts of the church as well. And so we need to help a person to see that the church is critical to their growth, critical to their life, just as breathing is critical to living. So the church is critical to their spiritual life, their spiritual growth. They need to eat. Some people may say, well, why should I go to church? Because I don't really remember the sermon on Wednesday when I heard it on Sunday. So I mean, just kind of what's the point? Like I don't understand. Well, Jonathan Edwards heard that same response or that same excuse back in his day, the 1740s and 50s. He just said, well, look, you don't remember every meal you've ever eaten, but you continue to eat meals because your body grows and is maintained from those meals. And same with preaching. We might not, and we will not remember every sermon we've ever heard. I mean, I know I haven't. I'm going to forget some of the principles I even learned today. But they help you in your spiritual growth. And so we need to help people not to think that way, but show them the importance of the church. I'm going to integrate biblical principles into the lives by just divine habit of putting off and putting on, which we have discussed in our introduction class. If you missed that, then you'll get it later. That'll be like the last class, one of the last classes that you do. But for sake of time, we'll move forward with that or from that. Again, also this is done by just learned ways of living. So when we are saved, we have to begin to live in a new way in which is not natural to us. It can take time and practice to integrate these new principles into our lives. And so give people grace, but help them to understand that it's necessary. We need to put off ungodly habits and put on godly habits in our lives. But all this is done through the power of the Holy Spirit. It's not us mustering up our own strength, but it's relying on Christ, relying on his word, relying on the Spirit who indwells us to obey Christ. It also comes, though, by, as you know from Philippians 2, 12 and 13, that work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God is at work in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. God is at work in you, the Holy Spirit. But we also need to work out to obey. Not work for salvation, but work it out, to apply it, to diligently study, to ponder and apply God's word into our lives and meditate on scripture, to spend focused time reading and studying and looking up verses and looking up words and reading theology books or something to learn more about God and his word. We're going to integrate them into the body of Christ, get them serving, have them served by other people other than you, have somebody else invite them over to their home or get them to use their gifts or get them involved in a GC. Again, we want to just show them the importance of growth in that way. We want to help them to understand the one another's. 58 times in the New Testament, the word one another is used. Now that's not 58 different one another's. There's about 40-ish different one another's, but many of them are repeated. But there's 58 times the word one another is used in the scriptures in the New Testament that speak about how we need to be in each other's lives as the body and the family of Christ. And so that's just critical. And I started that from day one. Homework assignment number 1 is go to church if you're not already coming. Come to our church or go to a like-minded church. In our area, it's very few between. They're either going to CDBC or there's a couple churches in Pinedale that we could point people to if we do counseling from Pinedale, which we do from time to time. Some churches down there, point them down there, or hey, come up here. We have 3 families that already do that, so come with them. But you need to come to church. It's very, very critical. Especially in these days with online church and YouTube church and Facebook church, we got to be very, very, very careful that we don't allow that to be the norm. We've got to gather with the body of Christ. Listen to sermons during the week, great, but we have to gather with the body. What are, just briefly here against criteria for determining when the integrations occurred? Number 1, they understand problems biblically and solutions biblically. They have a decrease in maybe the frequency or intensity of the temptations for, say, anxiety or temptations of lust or anger or whatever. They failed, but they've understood and handled that biblically and repented and progressed. They can give a good, honest self-evaluation of where things are biblically in their life. Progress is seen. Maybe they have remaining issues that they're still not fully kind of dealt with yet, but they know they are, and they're on a good progress, or on a good trajectory, and they don't really need as much as your help right now because you've taught them those principles, those tools. Maybe other people, a spouse or someone else in the church agrees, hey, yeah, they're really progressing so well. It's just so encouraging. It could be time to see, or really seeing that they are integrating. Maybe your time can be cut short with them. The counselee is promoting counseling other people. Hey, you should go get some help. I got help. You should get help too. That could be helpful as well. And then continued progress as time between sessions is lengthened. They're continuing to be plugged in. They're continuing to grow, even though you're not telling them to anymore. That's just what they see is, I need to do this. I need to stay connected to the vine. I need to stay connected to the body. Because if you're teaching them the counselee that, hey, you're a pinky finger, I mean, that's a crucial part of the body. And so if you cut yourself off and go over there, leave yourself on the table, you're disconnected from the body. You can't grow. You've got to be connected. You've got to be connected to the vine. And so, and to the body. So you want to help them see the importance of that. And so, you can terminate counseling when those two aspects of integration has really been formed in their life, where you can really see a lot of growth spiritually, and they're able to think through the issues biblically, and then also the life of this person has been transformed by being integrated really into the church. It's probably more. There's a lot more to say to that, but it's something that we continually really put into a lot of our notes, is that aspect of integration to the church. So it's not a long section here. Briefly, you can read through this, the format for conducting counseling sessions, something that you just think through, especially if you're newer at this, or even for discipleship. Before you meet with somebody, pray. Prepare to meet, review kind of what you want to talk to them about, or what you're thinking through with them for just discipleship plan. If you're new, for some kind of meeting, make the ice and pray with them. Talk about homework, practice the 8 I's we've discussed. Be flexible, be prayerful. As prayers in there a lot. Be attentive, watch closely, in the sense of watching their body movement, body language, take notes, respond wisely, respond appropriately. Just be wise. Break the ice. That can mean just like, hey, how'd the week go? Tell me about things somebody did that was fun, what was enjoyable, something like that. How to handle difficult situations or special situations. We don't really have time to go through all these and tell you how to deal with all of them specifically, but just know that these are things you're gonna have to think through. How are you gonna deal with that? Sometimes if you have somebody who's like number 2, 3, and 4, and 5 is somebody who is talking a lot. Sometimes you might have to tell them, hey, it seems like we're getting off topic here. Let's get back to this question. And I've had to do that many times. Like, hey, I want to hear you, I want to listen to you, but let's talk about this first. We're getting off track here. Let's come back here. You have to learn to bring him in, and you have to learn to interrupt with wisdom. And sometimes I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to interrupt you from time to time if I need to. It's not because I'm being rude or because I don't care, but because sometimes I may need to stop you from going off on a tangent, or I may need to stop you to correct bad theology or something. So it's okay to do that. After the session, again, reflect, pray, make notes of what you need to do different the next time. There's some reviews there of what to do before a first session with somebody, first time meeting with them. And again, you can read through that stuff on your own. And if you have questions about that, you can let me know. But yeah, that's the methods. That's the 8 I's. Again, we went through this fairly quickly, just in 4 weeks, 4 classes. And normally at undergraduate or graduate level classes, I mean, you're spending 15, 16, 20 hours discussing all this. And so I'm sorry I went through this really quick, but appreciate you guys' patience and grace. And again, we'll be back, Lord willing, next Monday in person, starting marriage and family counseling. And again, if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out. If you want more clarification on something, reach out or wait until we talk in person again, and then remind me to bring up some of the practical homework assignments, because I want to go through those in person just because it will make more sense. And that way, if you have questions specifically about those, I can dialogue with you about that. But anyway, guys, appreciate it. And Lord willing, we'll see you soon.